Hello, welcome to this week's Opening Bell. I'm boxing news editor Tris Dixon, joined by my trusty sidekick Matt Christie. Matt, how's things?
They're actually pretty good, pretty exciting at the moment.
It's been a weird week for us in the office. It's been very stressful in parts, not so stressful in other parts, but probably the highlight of your week came when you weren't even in the office on Monday night, didn't it?
Yeah, it really did.
And I'm not talking about anything that happened when you got home.
No, it was brilliant. I got to meet Riddick Bowe at the Box Nation studios.
Two big daddies in one room.
Yeah, Steve Bunce was there, who was kind enough to set up the interview, and I'm very, very grateful for that. It was just interesting to see Riddick and speak to him, and I think, as you know, I never feel anything but exceptionally lucky when I meet these guys, and that's now Tyson, Lennox Lewis, Riddick Bowe, and Holyfield from that wonderful era that have all met and interviewed, and it's been it was just really special. But out of all, for Riddick, for whatever reason, I think because I was expecting him to be in a bit worse shape than he was, like mentally. I thought he might get bored or whatever, but he was so warm and willing to answer any questions, and was just. It was a really special moment for me.
Were there any indications about the long, hard career that he's had behind him?
Yeah, I mean, there's the indications of that. I mean, he certainly seems to. He doesn't seem to be in a good place financially. However, he was very happy. There's certainly, which is no secret, he's been there, and it's been obvious for when he was still fighting, is the deterioration in his speech. But genuinely, hand on heart, I couldn't see anything to be concerned about in terms of how quickly his mind was working, how quickly the answers were coming. It was just how they were sounding that initially could have been a little worrying.
But you enjoyed his company nonetheless.
Completely enjoyed his company.
With a spring in your step. We've had a bit of a spring in our step this week, because here it is ahead of time. We've got this worldwide exclusive. We've spoken to Anthony Joshua this week. He's announced that he's turning pro with Matchroom. All the dates were in the digital edition before the press conference on Thursday. Which is great. I mean, it's fantastic news for British fight fans and possibly even fight fans around the world, isn't it?
Yeah, it's always good when, you know, a guy like Joshua does turn professional. He's got an Olympic gold medal. It's not only Olympic gold medal; it's up in the super heavyweight division, which always carries a bit more clout than the other ones. And it comes on the back of the announcement of Hay against Fury, and it hopefully we'll see a bit of a snowball effect with positive feeling in the heavyweight division.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. I mean, and in boxing period, because obviously this week we've also had the announced fight between Carl Froch and George Groves. I mean, it's funny. I mean, I can't pick out individuals, and I wouldn't like to anyway, but there seemed to be a school of thought a week or so ago that Froch would smash Groves to pieces and was too good and all the rest of it. And now people are thinking that Groves might be just timing it just right. What's your initial take on that fight?
My initial take was exactly what you've just said. Froch should be far too much for Groves. But, you know, Froch is at that stage of his career now, 36. He's had a few tough fights recently where potentially it may all fall apart on one night for him. George Groves is disciplined, he's a good boxer, he can box well from the outside, he's got a good punch. I can see why those that are tipping Groves to the upset are doing so. I say all that, I still would be very, very surprised if the young man was to take away Froch's titles.
Just, I don't think I've got any prices for that one up in front of me yet.
There we go.
Oh yeah, I do. How are you looking? Obviously, Groves will be an underdog. What sort of priced underdog would you have him?
Not massive, probably 2-1.
He is about 3.5 to 1.
Okay.
Lump on that?
I wouldn't, but yeah, it's decent value. I can see those odds. I can see as the build-up progresses and all the trash talk, which they've said it won't happen, but you can see the signs that it will do. I can see that Groves' odds will come down. So if you are going to have a bet on Groves, I'd do it now. Yeah,
okay. And then if we just look at some action in this week's issue, we've had John Dennon, who's been ringside I think 4 weekends in a row now.
Yeah.
He covered the show at Wembley. which was headlined by Dereck Chisora's heavyweight clash with Malik Scott. It was a good fight while it was going on, and then for some, I'm not sure exactly what happened. Although obviously everyone's got a different interpretation of it. It's amazing how strong the feeling is online about who was at fault for the count at the end. When Scott basically took a right hand while he was on the ropes, he went down in basically 3 or 4 stages along the ropes, hit the deck, seemed to be watching the referee to get the count, picked up the count. We've got a picture of him standing up at 8 with the referee counting 8 in the magazine this week. I guess he was up at 9, and then the fight was stopped by referee Phil Edwards. It's amazing, as I say, the strength of feeling that people have said it's a very black or white situation. They either think the referee's at fault or Malik Scott mistimed his rise and said Scott was at fault. A couple of people have said actually it was down to Chisora. It was his right hand that caused the confusion everywhere. So give Chisora the credit. I mean, which side of the fence are you coming down on?
I think it is. It's boxing, isn't it? And you can blame all of those things are to blame. I think Scott certainly mistimed it. I think he was perhaps a bit more stunned. He didn't look hurt as such, but it was just one of those shots that lands on the top of the head. And I think he misjudged it. I think he got up a little bit later than he was intended to. Edwards, I think, was perhaps at fault because he didn't. He waved the count off. It seemed early. There's an interesting viewpoint on the website which people can read from Mickey Van, and although he does blame the referee, he also goes into detail all the different things that a referee has to think about when there's a fighter on the canvas. Right. And it's really interesting the way he does it. And he kind of, although he does say that Edwards is at fault, he can see why that fault would have occurred.
Okay, I see. It's interesting. I mean, credit where it's due, though, also for Chisora, who was up against it, because Scott's got some skills and he had his successes in the fight, but Chisora kept coming forwards and dragging him into the trenches, really, wasn't he?
Yeah, exactly. And I feel a bit sorry for Chisora, in that it was a really strong performance, and that all the headlines really have been made by, was it Scott's fault? Did he dog it? Was the referee at fault? I think, let's remember that Chisora put him down with a legitimate shot, and he was working the body well. There were a few signs early on in that fight that Scott may struggle if he was taken to the trenches. And Chisora, he got a legitimate win against someone, a world-ranked and respected and previously unbeaten American opponent.
I think what really got me about the whole thing was I saw Scott's team and they were irate. They were going ballistic at referee Phil Edwards, who looked, almost in shell shock at whatever language was coming his way. I think what really caught my eye was that Scott didn't protest. And I don't know if that was him being a good sport or if he got a way out that he was after.
Yeah, I'm not sure. He said something, I think it was on Sunday or Monday, and it was via his Twitter account. There was a reaction to that criticism, really, and he said, if I was to lose and I was to kick up a stink, I'd be called a bad loser. But now I've been a gentleman about the whole thing. I'm being called, I've been accused of dogging it and what have you. He said, hashtag can't win or something like that. You can understand that, but when you've trained so hard, and it's the biggest fight for Scott as well at that point. If he'd have won that, he'd have gone into the top 10. He'd have got a title fight.
You'd spent years, like an abnormal amount of time, building this record, 36 and 0.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was getting to.
Wouldn't you just be going ballistic? I remember.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I remember my school sports day when I was 12 years old. I got pipped to the post in 100 meters, and I went ballistic. And I looked across. I was sure I'd come first. You see, I looked across.
Yeah.
And I thought I crossed the line before the guy who was actually given the first place. I went nuts.
Oh, it's funny you say that. I did I think it was the 60 metres. It was the last year of primary school, and there was me and this other guy who we were always kind of first, second. So I did a bit of training before the one school sports day, running to the lamppost at the bottom of the road and back, and did this 60 metre sprint thinking that I was in tip-top shape and was going to win it. Not only did I not finish first, I didn't even get in the medal, so I finished fourth, looked at my mum who was on the finishing line ready to congratulate me and just burst into tears.
I thought you might say she did a Don King and she was walking off with one of the other kids. Oh, dearie me. Yeah, I don't, it's, yeah, I mean, I just think, you know, you can obviously joke about that side of things, but you want that hunger in a fighter though, don't you? You want that hunger and that desire, and you want to see it. You want them to be emotional.
No, I agree 100% about that. I do agree with you 100% about that. You would think that would have been his reaction, but I think just because he didn't react as if he'd got a raw deal, let's not presume there was anything fishy going on.
No, well, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, what would make sense all round, I'd like to think, is a rematch. Yeah,
it was a decent enough fight. It wasn't a classic, I didn't think, but it was fairly enthralling. I think, and the rematch, the outcome wouldn't be a certainty. It would probably sell on the back of the controversy of this one. Makes perfect sense.
Chisora, though, he's as a consequence of the win, he's now become the mandatory challenger for the European title against the dangerous Kubrat Pulev. Good fight for Chisora?
You'd favour Pulev, wouldn't you? You would favour Pulev. But yeah, it's a good fight for him. I mean, I think... but the thing is, though, he went into the Robert Helenius fight, and this is when a lot of people, myself included, thought Helenius was a real threat to the Klitschko's. And Chisora exposed...
You thought that at the time, did you?
I did, yeah. I did. I wasn't the only one, but I did think Helenius was something special. Yeah. He's on the back of all those knockouts. Whether he could do that against Pulev, and whether Chisora would want to go into someone's backyard again like that, where he did get a raw deal, remains to be seen.
But real credit to Chisora. I mean, he is one of those guys who, you know, he'll fight anybody, won't he? And if you look at his record, it proves it. You know, the sort of who's who of, what is it, 7 or 6 or 5 of his last 7 or something, decent, you know, top 10 guys.
Yeah, definitely. He will fight anybody. But I mean, he's also got that name now in the heavyweight division, where I think he can make a really, and he is currently, but I think he can make a really, really nice living out of it, and not necessarily fight the Pulevs in their backyard.
Yeah, sure. Now, one guy who really did catch the eye on Saturday night was Billy Joe Saunders. Not just for those Dayglow trunks that he had on and matching boots, but I mean, I thought he was fantastic against Gareth O'Sullivan, who never really got untracked, because I just don't think he had any answer to what Billy Joe was doing.
No, Billy Joe's a really, really talented fighter, and you know, his impending fight against John Ryder. I think Saunders was always the favourite, but you watch that fight against O'Sullivan, and you wonder how on earth Ryder could live with Saunders. And I say that, and I've been really impressed with what John Ryder's done so far.
You know, obviously, Billy Joe is with promoter Frank Warren. Martin Murray is with Ricky Hatton.
Yeah.
And you know, with Ricky Hatton taking his fighters to Box Nation, people have talked about Billy Joe Saunders versus Martin Murray. I would see that as a similar sort of fight to Groves and Froch. Maybe not in terms of style, you know, in terms of boxing style. Obviously, you've got Billy Joe's very fast, quick southpaw, but in terms of levels and where they are in their careers.
Yeah, maybe I wouldn't. I'd have Saunders and Murray a bit closer than
I think so. Yeah,
Froch and Groves, but I completely take on board what you're saying, and I think it's the kind of fight where Saunders could come up and really show where his talents lie. He could really show that he belongs at world class. Yeah,
I mean, imagine if he put in a really good performance against Martin Murray. You know, as a guy who pushed Sergio Martinez all the way.
Yeah.
Earlier in the year, where there was nothing to choose between them. So there's been plenty of action worldwide that we've picked up on in this week's issue, as always. One fight that particularly caught the eye going into last week was Jose Alusigan against Hank Lundy. Alusigan was the pre-fight favourite, but seemed to have somewhat taken his eye off the ball to lose to Hank Lundy, who's been really a fringe contender over the last couple of years. And I think with regards to Alusigan, I mean, he's one of those guys who's just relentlessly done over by the governing bodies, wasn't he? he sort of sat in the number 1 spot, number 2 spot, number 3 spot, and people kept getting promoted into title fights ahead of him. And I mean, that's when a fighter's in his prime, the last thing he needs is inactivity.
I think that's the problem, though, isn't it, with Alushigan, in that, and he had that problem in this country, in that promoters recognised that he was a talented fighter, but perhaps he wasn't selling tickets. And he's one of those guys that that ends up in the Who Needs Him club, and he just couldn't quite get out of there, could he?
No, it's unfortunate. I mean, and when he did get his big chance, the big exposure, it came against the crusher that is Lucas Matisse. I mean, you wouldn't have wanted it against anyone. It's probably the last person you would have wanted your big chance to come against. So anyway, that's all for now. We're just going to take a break for a quick word from our sponsors, and we'll be back.
William Hill, sponsors of the Opening Bell podcast. Bet £25 and get a £25 bet free. Bet now with williamhill.com.
Hello and welcome back. Matt, you've done a preview for this week's magazine. Andre Berto against Jesus Soto Carras. Was it a tough call?
I'll say no at the moment, being as though the fight still hasn't happened. I'm pretty convinced that Berto will win it, and win it fairly comfortably. I think it's a fight that's a lot of fun. Carras is a guy you can't write off, but Berto, I think, is a different level.
I think Berto thinks he's a different level. I think that's part of the illusion. I think with Berto, I think he's been found out to a degree now. Obviously when he had that titanic struggle with Victor Ortiz, he's scraped by Louis Collazo a while ago. I just don't think Berto is as good as he's cracked up to be.
No, I think he's got a lot of talent. He's always struggled with self-discipline in the ring at times. When I say he's on another level, I'm not saying he's up there with the Floyd Mayweathers of the world, which I think is where Berto would have put himself 18 months ago. Yeah. But he's joined Virgil Hunter, hasn't he? See if Virgil Hunter can work this supposed magic wand that a lot of fighters seem to think that he has. And
Soto Carras doesn't possess the same abilities of Victor Ortiz or Robert Guerrero, the guys who've beaten Berto in 2 of his last 3 fights. But it's always a bit of a shame when these big possible stars have their bubbles burst, isn't it? Because you look forward to them being in the big fights, in the massive fights. And Berto, who I spoke to earlier in the year, I think we said last week before the Guerrero Mayweather fight, he just said that the rug's been pulled on him fighting Mayweather twice with the losses to Ortiz and then Guerrero, and obviously those guys went on and had the Mayweather fight instead. So it's been there twice for the taking. He couldn't take it either time, and I'm not sure that's not something with Berto if he's a bit of a choker.
Maybe. I think I can't imagine that it would take quite a run of form for him now to secure a fight with somebody like Mayweather, I think.
And I mean, he's at 29, so he'd like to think his best years aren't behind him. But you remember the fighter that Berto was in 2009 when he was beating guys like Juan Arango, Carlos Quintana. He wasn't trying the shoulder rolls then, or the stuff that he couldn't do. No, it seemed to be a bit more focused on what he was doing at the time, or what he could do well.
Well, I think that's it, and I think that's the danger when the fighters get to a certain point and they start doing things differently. It was against Guerrero where there were times where Berto looked ludicrous in there. Was it Guerrero?
Yeah, it was, with the shoulder rolls and trying to do all the Mayweather-esque stuff, yeah.
It just didn't suit him, and on the way up you say that, but I think the biggest the point where I suddenly thought, hang on, Berto, because I thought Berto years and years ago when I first saw Berto, and he was kind of the star of ESPN Friday Night Fights. I saw Berto then, and I really did think he was going to be something special. I thought he would be up there with the Mayweathers
and the Helleniuses.
But then, good, nice one, touche. But then he was against the Luis Collazo when he really, really struggled. And then I thought, whoa, hang on, maybe he's hit his level there. And I think that is probably about his level. And that's not a knock at him. Let's face it, 99.9% of fighters will not reach the level that Berto has. But I think ultimately he's not going to reach the level he thought he was going to.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, obviously there's a fight on the undercard. Keith Thurman is fighting Diego Gabriel Chavez. Thurman, Berto on the same bill. I mean, you'd like to think that those are semi-finals with an idea of them facing one another, in 6 months or so.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the most appealing one there for the semi-finalist winners to be Thurman and Berto. Thurman and Berto fight would be a lot of fun. Thurman, you can compare him really to Berto, not in the fact that they're that similar in style, but Thurman's following a similar path to Berto.
Well, it's funny. We've been asking our followers on Twitter and the people who like our page on Facebook who they think will win between Thurman and Berto, and it's been really interesting going through all the comments. Actually, it's a really even split. Some saying that Berto's leagues above, and some saying that he's ready to be taken, and that Thurman is the next big thing. So some really interesting comments there. And as you'd imagine for that fight, it's in and around the 50-50 mark. That's probably about fair, isn't it?
I think that's fair. Thurman's unbeaten. He showed. I thought I was quite impressed with him against Zavek. Although he also showed in that fight that he's far from invincible.
Yeah, sure. But Zavek's a good fighter.
Yeah, Zavek's a good fighter. I think, people were just looking at the fact that he'd been stopped by Berto, and that really, if you looked at the fight closely, it wasn't a stoppage where Zavek was out on his feet or he was, he'd been knocked down or anything like that. It was injuries that curtailed the evening for him there. But anyway, yeah, Thurman Berto, I'd favour, I think, Thurman right now, just because he's on the crest of a wave and he's unbeaten. Berto's got those doubts in his mind, and once those doubts are there, they're very often difficult to dislodge.
And he's got a new trainer, and obviously that takes time to gel and what have you as well. So it is an action-packed issue. We've obviously got a preview of Zhu Shiming's latest fight as well. What's particularly caught your eye in the magazine this week?
Well, there's two really good features. One by yourself, Ishe Smith, who was supposed to be fighting, but he had to pull out. But it's a really interesting read about some of the stuff that Smith has been through, and how he's pulled himself out some really dark times, and the light at the end of the tunnel was worth chasing in the end. And I think that's a really, really good read. And also man of the moment, Anthony Ogogo, who in slightly different circumstances, but equally as difficult, has had to overcome some really, really high obstacles to get where he is today.
Yeah, definitely. That's great stuff there from John Dennon, who's obviously followed Ogogo's journey thoroughly over the last sort of couple of years. Now, we've got plenty of stuff coming up over the summer, haven't we? I mean, we've been talking about next week's issue that we're currently working on, where there's something of a feast for heavyweight fight fans, isn't there?
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, what we've done is we've got a panel which includes Matt. We've also got Nigel Collins, who's our columnist, who started writing for Boxing News back in the 70s before he became editor of The Ring. We've got Bob Mee, who's another of our columnists and renowned historians, and we've got George Zeleny, who is also a boxing historian. And we've got the four of you discussing the highs, the lows, and the best and worst bits of heavyweight boxing. I mean, what sort of leapt out at you so far as we've been sort of working on that feature?
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to answer those questions. I mean, things like, from the obvious to who's the best heavyweight of all time, to other things like which is the best fight that was never made, to the often asked question like which two fighters would you pitch together from different eras, and to read, it's an honour that my own personal opinions are going to be pitched alongside those guys that you mentioned who've been there, seen it and done it, But heavyweight boxing for me, from the age of such a young age, has been a massive, massive passion, as you know.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that Bert Cooper made any of your lists to do this.
He almost did. I almost kind of got him in there with most fun fight.
Yeah, well,
he almost made it.
He could have been in half a dozen of those, couldn't he?
Yeah, he almost made it into that.
So what was the fight we were talking about? Was it Bert Cooper against Tommy? No, not
no,
Tommy Morrison.
Michael Moorer.
No, the one that best, a good fight that could have been made. Bert Cooper
and Shannon Briggs.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, Briggsy. So, yeah, I'm not sure how we got into that, but anyway. So and then the following week, we're going to do a similar debate around the Alvarez-Mayweather fight, which is a really, really, obviously it's the biggest fight that could be made in the sport at the moment worldwide. There is a lot of speculation, particularly now that the fight featuring Lucas Matisse and Daniel Garcia has been added to the bill, that it will be the biggest pay-per-view in boxing history, meaning it's got to top the 2.4 or 2.5 million buys that De La Hoya did with Mayweather back in 2007. I mean, I really like the fight, and I can't say anything bad about the fight, but I'm not sure that Alvarez is now at the level where De La Hoya was then. And although Mayweather, and I'm not sure that Alvarez now is at the level that Mayweather was then, bear in mind Mayweather was the B side of that attraction, if we're being honest.
I agree with you. I'd be surprised if it came out with those figures. What you also have to take into consideration is the amount of, and I'm not saying this is a good thing by any means, quite the opposite, but a lot of these guys that may have paid the money can now kind of go on the internet, they can find these illegal streams, and there's things like that going on, and it becomes harder and harder for these kind of events to give a realistic representation of the appeal of certain things, and I think it's like that across all sports at the moment. Yeah,
I think you're right. It is going to be interesting. I mean, Mayweather, he's not a massive favourite. He's 7-19 as the best price you'll get on him, and with Alvarez at 11-4. So there's no one that Mayweather wouldn't fight anyone with odds that are that close, would they? There's no one else that would be that close in the betting.
No, probably not unless he was fighting somebody a lot bigger than him. So if he went in with Gennady Golovkin or something like that, but which I don't think is a realistic fight for Mayweather. However much people may say that he should step up. I mean, let's not forget he started out as featherweight or something, didn't he?
I think what's interesting looking at the odds as well is that the fight that's been made this last week, Matisse and Garcia, the way the bookies see it, tells me that they think that Matisse's going to come in, slug it out with Garcia, and they're just going to go to war. And they're basically saying that Matisse's going to win the war because they've got him at 4-9 on favourite with Garcia 9-4 underdog.
It's interesting. It's interesting odds. I think perhaps it's because Matisse is a bit like flavour of the month at the moment, isn't he? I wouldn't write Garcia off in that fight.
Good price at 9-4.
Yeah, definitely.
And also, I've noticed. I mean, we'll go on about this in a week or so's time. Nathan Cleverly is a 5-4 underdog to defend his title against Sergey Kovalev, who's 4-5 on.
Again, that's surprising odds to me. You'd think Kovalev has got a lot of potential. He scored some eye-catching knockouts. He looks like a really, really good prospect. He hasn't fought anybody like Nathan Cleverly.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's disrespectful
really
to the Welshman.
Surprising to have Nathan as the underdog on his home patch as the champion. I mean, and none of all the bookies are the same. No one's got Cleverly as the favourite, which is the first time I've seen that, which is surprising. What's not surprising is the most popular bet is on Cleverly to win at 5-4. 25-1 the draw, Matt, cheeky fiver.
Never rule it out.
Yeah, when we used to joke about it, we then got 2 draws on the same show. So, okay, Matt, just in closing, I'll say that I've been going to the Boxing Hall of Fame since 1999. One of the sad things about that is, firstly, going back year after year and not seeing the same smiley, happy faces from people who've passed away, and also seeing the deterioration in fighters over those years who've hit the latter stages of their lives, and none more so than Emile Griffith, who was one of those who deteriorated over the years. But he was a constant presence, often had a smile on his face, was a real gentleman, and a pleasure to spend some time with in his company. And he'll be much missed, having passed away this week. And Matt, obviously, I know that you knew Billy Smith as well, the journeyman from Worcester, who was living in Llanelli, who also died this week. What would you like to say about Billy?
He was a gentleman. I remember when I went to see him, and it was one of my first assignments, one of my first major assignments with Boxing News. I mean, quite sadly, the first one was writing the obit for Billy's brother Ernie. But I remember Billy picking me up, and he was so warm. You know, he was welcoming. We'd never met before, and that kind of that warmth continued. Whenever we would see each other, he was pleased with the feature. But I mean, what came across then was that every day was a struggle for him, because he was just thinking about Ernie. And even though they were twins, Billy always looked up to Ernie, and I don't think he ever got over that. But I was surprised. I must admit, I was surprised, because I know that Billy had a young son who he loved very much, and you know, my thoughts really are with the Smith family.
Yeah, and we'd just like to say that Emile and Billy Smith, rest in peace.